Miri, cool. Okay, Shavua Tov, everybody. Yom Yerushalayim Sameach. We are going to learn a little bit of Tanakh today. I've just muted you all, so Leon will need to unmute himself in a sec. Oh, do you know what, Leon? The one thing I didn't get ready on the screen was our chapter. I'll just do that now. We are in Shmuel Aleph, chapter 15. And if you remember at the end of last week's shiur, we managed to get through 3 psukim last week, which was quite good for us. And we got to the point whereby Shmuel had given Shaul the order to go and do the mitzvah which had been commanded to the people 450 years earlier, which was to wipe out Amalek. And we spoke a little bit about what was the difference between Amalek and everybody else. Why have we an ongoing mitzvah to wipe out Amalek, which we symbolically do at Purim with the shouting out down of Haman's name. And we said that the reason for that, the difference, there's a philosophical difference between Amalek and every other enemy of the people, in that they were an immoral enemy. They acted with war crimes, attacking the young and the weak and the vulnerable when they weren't attacked themselves. And the commandment to wipe out Amalek is a dual commandment. It's a commandment for us to wipe out immorality and to attack nations who are immoral in their behavior, and therefore not to stand by when another nation behaves in an Amaleki way. And on an inward-looking level, we have a commandment to remove Amalek completely from ourselves, both as a nation and as individuals. So the mitzvah of Mechiyat Amalek, the rubbing out of Amalek, this mitzvah is also a mitzvah on each individual person to enable themselves to refine their own character and to take out of ourselves that characteristic of Amalek, that cruel characteristic, that immoral behavior that is lurking there inside of us. And that's part of the moral imperative of the commandment to remove Amalek. But here in our chapter, we are talking about the physical job that King Saul, who was the first person in effect to have the ability to do that. He was the king of Israel, the first king of Israel. The commandment was given before they entered the land, that when you enter the land, you shall wipe out Amalek. It's taken 450 years. It's taken the reign of Joshua and all of the Shoftim until we've got to King Saul, until the opportunity has arisen for Shaul to do this. Now, the reason it's arisen is because Shmuel was in the ascendancy. We said at the end of chapter 14 that he, after his victory against the Philistines, which was engineered by Jonathan and completed by Shaul, they then went on and routed a lot of different other nations, and wherever they went, they were successful, and they caused fear amongst the nations. This was the time when they now could turn their attention to Amalek. Let me share the screen with you. We're on chapter 15. Those of you who are following in a Tanakh, you should have it on your screen in a second or two. Yes, you've got it? Okay. So we said this was the commandment. Let's just go from the top. Leon, read the first 3 psukim first of all for us. That's where we started.
Samuel said to Saul, Hashem sent me to anoint you as king over his people, over Israel. So now hear the sound of Hashem's words. So said Hashem, master of legions, I have remembered what Amalek did to Israel, the ambush he emplaced against him on the way as he went up from Egypt. Now go and strike down Amalek and destroy everything he has. Have no pity on him. Kill man and woman alike, infant and suckling alike, ox and sheep alike, camel and donkey alike.
Okay, so let's just stop there for the sec. That's what we did last week. And we said that we had a whole interesting discussion. Those of you that don't remember it or weren't there, it's worthwhile going on to the recording of last week and have a look at the last sort of 10, 15 minutes where we had a very interesting discussion about the morals of war in its historical context and why it was that even the animals had to be destroyed because they were tainted. And I told you the story, if you remember, about the yeshiva who bought toilet paper with a donation from somebody who was a Buddhist. And so that was the imperative, go and kill Amalek completely. And that's where we got to last week. And we also pointed out the similarity in the language here of Pakadete Asher Asa Amalek Israel. That was the very similar language to Parshat Zachor. Zachor Eit Asher Asa Amalek. Remember that which Amalek did, which is Parshat Zachor we read just before Purim. So that was the commandment. Let's now have a look and see what actually happened.
Saul had all the people summoned, and he counted them through lambs, 200,000 infantrymen, and the men of Judah were 10,000.
Okay, let's stop there. Interesting bits of Hebrew in this pasuk, so we don't want to miss it. Vayeshama Shaul. Now, if you did not have the vowels here, and you just saw those two words, you would almost certainly say Vayishma Shaul. It's an unusual word, Vayeshama. Vayishma Shaul, which is what you would think it said, means and Saul heard. Vayishma. Okay? But it says Vayeshama. And this is a causative form. And it means that Shaul caused to hear, or caused, and you have to read it with the next two words, et ha'am. It means that Shaul caused the people to hear or to listen. In other words, as it says here, he called the people together. And you translated it as summoned the people, I think.
Yes.
Which is interesting because both translations have used an active verb, either called or summoned. And actually, the translation is not accurate because Vayeshama is a causative verb. It's an unusual word. Shaul caused the people to hear. Effectively, he called them or summoned them. So the translation is getting the flavor, but not the accuracy of it. Vayifkedem, and he counted them. Where have you heard that word before? Were you listening carefully in Shaul yesterday? What was yesterday's parsha all about?
It's about the census.
Yeah, census, that's right. Vayifkedein, that's the word for the census. Tifkedu otam, you shall count them. So he counted them. Now this is interesting because the next word is batalaim. And in my translation here, they're using this as the name of a place. He counted them ba, in or at, Telaim, a place called Telaim. You can see on the screen there. He counted them in Telaim. On the other hand, The Art Scroll translates it as follows, Leon.
He counted them through lambs.
He counted them through lambs. Tle is a lamb. Another word for a lamb. Keves is a lamb, but also tle is a lamb. It's a kid, a young animal. Why would he count them through animals? Why would he do that?
Because you're not allowed to count the people.
Yeah, you're not allowed to count the people directly. Who counted the people directly?
Is it Moshe?
Moshe did actually, yes, but that wasn't what I was referring to. He did it because he was told to do so in yesterday's Stedra. But initially, Moshe used the Chetzi shekel, yeah, the Machzit shekel. Yeah. Everybody had to give half a shekel, and that's how he counted them. Somebody in Tanakh, who we will read about in a few chapters' time, counted the people and suffered a great, very serious consequence. David Amalek counted the people, and a terrible plague occurred as a result of that. Shaul obviously knew that halakha, and according to the translation of the Art Scroll, he used lambs to count them. So how he did that, I don't know. Everybody was to bring a lamb. I don't know. Everyone was to bring half a lamb. Not sure how it worked, but he used the lambs in order not to transgress the Aveira of counting directly, as Anita quite rightly points out. Now, we come to our difficulty again here that we spoke about in some detail at yesterday's shiur. For those of you that weren't here yesterday in Shaul, I spoke about the difficulties in the numbers in Tanakh being not accurate numbers. And here's another example of it: 200,000 ragli, 200,000 footmen, and 10,000 men from the tribe of Yehuda. 210,000 footmen Shaul called together. Philip's not here to tell us, but if he was, he would tell you that the standing army of today's Israeli army is approximately 120,000 soldiers. So you're talking about double the size of the Israeli army today, 200,000 footmen. Not likely, very unlikely, in fact. And we spoke yesterday in some detail about a different way of looking at these numbers. I'm not going to go into it now, but it centered around the use of the word Aleph and Aluf, meaning that Aleph doesn't necessarily mean 1,000. It can also mean a contingent. So 200 contingents and 10 contingents from the tribe of Judah, which would make sense because if you have 10 from one tribe, you would expect to have 10 from each tribe, so there would be 200 from all of the other 10 tribes. Remember, Levi doesn't fight. So for the moment, we'll translate it as 200,000, but don't necessarily accept those numbers as literal. But it's a big army by anybody's account. The idea of the pasuk is to tell us that there was a big army. Okay, next verse.
Saul came to the city of Amalek, and he fought them in the valley. Saul said to the Keinites, "Go, withdraw, descend from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them. For you acted kindly to all the children of Israel when they went up from Egypt." So the Keinites withdrew from among Amalek.
Okay, what's going on here, please? Anybody have a clue what is going on here? Who are these Keinites? What are they doing in the middle of Amalek? And why is Saul bothered about them to the extent that he's giving them a chance to run away before he gets stuck in to Amalek? So there are three questions there. Who are the Keinites? What are they doing in Amalek? And why did Shaul let them run away? Any ideas? Anybody? Apart from Leon, who's sitting there smugly with a smug smile on his face because he's read on. Anyone? Okay, Leon, do you want to enlighten us?
Yes, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, was a Kenite, and he was very helpful to Moses and to the children of Israel when they went into the desert. So he wanted to spare them any problems.
Okay, they're very nicely, succinctly put. And I'm going to delve into that a little bit more deeply. So Leon says that the Keinites were part of the family of Yitro. Okay, but hang on a minute. Yitro was what? What was his job?
High priest of Midian.
High priest of Midian, yes. Michael just got there before you, Anita. You'll have to be quicker on the button to unmute yourself, because I know you were going to say that. He was the high priest of Midian. He was Kohen Midian. So how does Leon know that the Keinites were part of Yitro's family? How does Leon know that?
I was reading on.
Okay, well, Leon, tell us where you know it from, please.
Well, I didn't know I knew it, but it's probably from chapter 15 of Shemot.
Okay, let's have a look at chapter 15 of Shemot, shall we? Why do you think it's chapter 15? Is that where we meet Yitro for the first time? Okay, I'll save you the bother. I'll save you the bother. It's not in chapter 15 of Shemot. In fact, it's not in the Torah at all that he is a Kenite. He is a Midianite in the Torah. Where we find it, and you've all learnt this, it's in Shoftim. And of course, you were just testing me, weren't you? You really remembered that it was in Shoftim chapter 1, okay? Chapter 1, verse 16. Leon will read it. It is on the screen for you now.
The children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, ascended from the city of date palms with the children of Judah to the wilderness of Judah that is south of Arad. They went and settled with the people.
Okay, so there you are. You all remembered that in the first chapter of Shoftim, we were talking about the first of the Shoftim, Otniel. Okay, Otniel, who is the brother of Kalev ben Yefuneh, and he here we have the story of the Keinites, and it tells us explicitly that the children of Keini, the father-in-law of Moses, Moses' father-in-law had lots of different names, and one of them was Keini, and so the Keinites were the children of Yitro. Now, that's who they are. Second question is, what are they doing in the middle of Amalek?
They just went to settle there, didn't they?
They went to settle with the people. Now, the question is, where is the territory of Amalek? Somebody said it last week. We know where the territory of the Plishtim is, don't we? It was on the west coast. Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Gat, all those places, Lachish. We know where the territory of the Plishtim were. Where was the territory of Amalek?
Yeah, it must have done. Well, when they came out of Egypt, it must have been Sinai somewhere.
Okay, so then they came out of Egypt, it was Sinai. And now where is it? Where's Shaul at this point? Shaul is in Givat Shaul, right? He's in his own territory, the territory of Binyamin. So it was a bit of a trick question. The territory of Amalek is all over the place. They were a nomadic tribe who went around causing trouble, attacking vulnerable people. We know that, don't we? Because it says so in Parshat Zachor. Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek. And here it is on the screen for you, because I can't remember all the words without in my tired state. Here we go. Zachor et asher asa lecha Amalek b'derech b'tzeitchem Mitzrayim. Remember that which Amalek did when you came out. Asher korcha b'derech. He met you on the way. Vayezanev b'cha kol hanechashalim acharecha. And he attacked you from behind, all the weaklings, all the vulnerable people. So that was their modus operandi. They were all over the place. They were a nomadic people who went around attacking wherever they could. And at this particular time, they were around the territory of Binyamin. And that's why Shaul had the opportunity, because Shaul was in the ascendancy at this time. That was his stronghold. He had the opportunity at this time. He didn't need to go to the north to Dan, or he didn't need to go to the south to Beersheba or to Sinai. Amalek happened to be handy, very close by, because that happens to be the territory that they had at that time. So they were in that territory, and the Keinites were mixed up amongst them. So that's the second question. The first question was, who were the Keinites? They were the descendants of Yitro. What were they doing amongst Amalek? Well, they weren't amongst Amalek. Amalek were amongst them, because that was their nature, to be nomadic and to move around and to attach themselves to various peoples. And the third question was, why did Shaul allow them to run away? And Leon answered that question as well. And the reason was because Yitro had done good for Israel when they came out of Egypt. What good did Yitro do?
He had appointments made, men of 1,000, men of 50, right. Men of
he instituted 10. A system of courts to enable Moshe to have a bit of rest and peace, and not have everybody coming to him with all the shilas. And he managed to delegate it at Yitro's instruction. He delegated various tasks to various people, the judges of tens, judges of hundreds, judges of thousands. So Yitro advised Moshe correctly to institute a system of higher and lower courts. He also Yitro acted as something else. Anybody know what else Yitro did apart from institute the court system? I'll give you a clue. David Altman.
Guide. Tour guide.
Yes, he was exactly that, Michael. He was a tour guide. We know that because when Yitro says, I'm going back to my people, I haven't got the exact pasuk up because it's only just come into my head, so I didn't prepare it. And it'll take me a little while to find it, so you'll have to take my word for it. But when Yitro says, I'm going back to my people, Moshe tries to persuade him not to do so. And he says that you will be good for us, and we will be good for you. And he says, you will be our eyes in the desert. And apparently Yitro was well versed in the various paths in the desert, and he helped Bnei Israel get from A to B in the correct manner. He was their guide and their eyes in the desert. So all in all, Yitro was a very positive influence on Bnei Israel. Now, there's a very interesting machloket between the Ramban and the Rashbam on this, and I want to introduce it to you. we find in the story of the first story of Amalek, the first time we have it, it's on the screen now. It's in chapter 17 of Shemot. We read it out last week. We're going to read it out again. Chapter 17, verse 8. It'll be familiar to you because it is the laning for Purim, morning, and it is the story of Moshe with his hands in the air. Verse 8, Leon, and onwards, please.
Amalek came and battled Israel in Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose people for us and go do battle with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did as Moses said to him to do battle with Amalek, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur ascended to the top of the hill. It happened that when Moses raised his hand, Israel was stronger, and when he lowered his hand, Amalek was stronger. Moses' hands grew heavy, so they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on his side and one on that side. And he remained with his hands in faithful prayer until sunset. Joshua weakened Amalek and its people with the sword's blade.
Okay, let's stop there. So, when did this occur? This was the battle of Amalek, the first battle with Amalek there that we had when they came out of Mitzrayim. And it tells us where it was. It was in Rephidim. But when was it? Can you please date it? I don't mean to give me the exact date, but more or less, when did this occur?
Was it straight away when they came out of Egypt?
It was indeed. It was straight away when they came out of Egypt. Now, what happened 7 weeks after they came out of Egypt?
Shavuot, no?
Okay, Shavuot. And what happened at Shavuot?
They gathered in the produce.
We got the Torah.
We got the Torah. We had Matan Torah. Okay. So 7 weeks after we came out of Mitzrayim, we counted 49 days, and we got the Torah on Har Sinai at Shavuot. This battle with Amalek took place when? Before or after Matan Torah?
Which
Battle. That's battle before.
After.
Okay, it actually happened after the giving of the Torah. Okay, they've gone to Rephidim and they've had this battle, and then we have the end of the chapter. Is we have there the end of the chapter. Moshe makes an altar. They win the battle. Moshe makes an altar. What's the beginning of the next chapter, please? Chapter 18. Before I show it you on the screen, what is it? Who knows what comes after this? Jeffrey.
I think the golden calf.
No, that's a bit later. Here we go. Chapter 18 is on the screen for you now. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midian. We read the story of Yitro. Immediately after, we read the story of Rephidim, the story of the battle with Amalek. Now, there is a machloket between the Ramban Nachmanides and Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi. Ramban always holds that the Torah is in chronological order, and it does not go out of chronological order. Other commentators, the Rashbam, for example, does accept that the Torah, it's in Hebrew, it says, Ein mukdam u'mu'uchar b'Torah. There is no necessarily a chronological order. Things can be out of order chronologically in the Torah if there's a good reason for it. Okay, now, so there's a machloket about this with the Ramban and the Rashbam. Now, the question is, did Yitro arrive to Israel before or after Matan Torah? Okay, before or after Matan Torah? Jeffrey?
After.
Okay, according to Jeffrey, Yitro turned up after Matan Torah. Now, where in the chronological order of Parshat Yitro is the Ten Commandments? Well, I'll tell you, it's in Revi'i. It's in the fourth Aliyah of Yitro. We will be reading it. Here is another example of how our shiur is always apt for the times, because we will be reading this next Sunday, a week today. We will be reading this. It's the laning for Shavuot, and it is in Revi'i of Yitro. And what you've got on the screen is Rishon of Yitro. This is the beginning of Parshat Yitro. So if you read it chronologically, if you're the Ramban, then Yitro arrived before Matan Torah, because there is the Yitro arriving. Now, Moses' father-in-law, blah, 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 blah. And he came and he brought his children and he came to Moshe. And then later on, we have the Ten Commandments. We have the Har Sinai. So reading it chronologically, he came before Matan Torah. Now, that's what the Ramban says, because the Ramban will not have any truck with the idea that the Torah can be written out of order. Rashbam, on the other hand, has no problem with the Torah being out of chronological order, as long as there's a good reason for it. And he says, the Rashbam says, that it's obvious that Jeffrey Glassky is correct, that that Yitro arrived to the Bnei Israel after Matan Torah. Why is it obvious? Why did you say that, Jeffrey? Why did you say that he came afterwards?
Because Yitro instructed Moshe to bring in helpers to judge the people, because it was too much for them. It was too much for Moshe to interpret the Torah to all the people all of the time. So he needed, and it was Yitro that perceived this, that saw this, and he came along to lend his expertise and advise him.
Correct. Now, what you didn't know is we'd spoken about that a few minutes ago, just before you joined. But the fact that you've pointed that out now is absolutely correct. So the Rashbam says it's obvious that he came after Matan Torah, because it was after Matan Torah that suddenly all the people have got 1,000,000 shilas, right? 1,000,000 shilas to Moshe, because they've just heard the Torah and they don't understand this, they don't understand that. They want to know, is this chicken kosher? Is this, have I trafed up my kitchen because I put a milchig spoon in a fleishik dishwasher? You know, Moshe's got all these shilas now to deal with, and he couldn't cope. And Yitro says, hey, Moshe, you're not doing this properly. You've got to get some kind of help here. And so, according to the Rashbam, it's obvious from the context that Yitro arrived after Matan Torah. So Ramban is not having it because it's out of order. But the Rashbam says that the out of orderness is okay. Sorry, Michael. I'm very tired. You have to allow me the odd grammatical lapse at this time. This lack of chronological order, is that better? Yeah. The lack of chronological order, says the Rashbam, is allowable as long as we've got a reason. And he says, this is the fascinating part, and this is why I'm telling you this. Why is the reason, what is the reason that the Torah puts Yitro here before Matan Torah? And the answer is because the Torah wants it immediately after Amalek. Remember, I told you that the previous chapter, there it is, chapter 17, get you back on the screen. The end of chapter 17 is the battle with Amalek. Beginning of chapter 18, here we go. Oh, I've lost it now. Click here. Oh dear. My computer's tired as well by the looks of things. Lost it. Okay, we'll try and get it back. So the chapter before is the end of chapter 17 is Amalek. The beginning of chapter 18 is Yitro, and the Rashbam says that the Torah wants to put it one next to the other because it's a contrast. The Torah wants to contrast the horrible behavior of Amalek with the excellent behavior of Yitro. And by juxtaposing, I know it doesn't like it today. Chabad's gone on strike today. It doesn't want to give me the right wording on the screen. So I'll stop the share and you can look at me instead. So the reason it's not in chronological order, says the Rashbam, is to make a contrast between Amalek, whose behavior was rotten, and Yitro, whose behavior was exemplary. He not only did he give Moshe good advice, he also was a guide and helped them through the Midbar. And so the Torah, according to the Rashbam, brings forward, as it were, the story of Yitro's arrival in order to stress the difference between Amalek and Yitro. So now, if we go back to our chapter of Shmuel, they still managed to got that on the screen, so I will show you that. We go back to our chapter there, Shaul, verse 6. Again, Leon, verse 6, please. Chapter 15 of Shmuel.
Saul said to the Kenite, "Go, withdraw, descend from among the Amalekite, lest I destroy you with them. For you acted kindly to all the children of Israel when they went up from Egypt." So the Kenite withdrew from among Amalek.
Okay, so that's why we've now answered our three questions. The first, we had three questions on this pasuk. Number one, in mitten drinnen here, we've got stuff about Keinites. What's the God do with anything? We're talking about Amalek. What are they doing here? Secondly, what were they doing in the middle of Amalek? And thirdly, why did Shaul allow them to leave before he attacked? So the answer is, to the first question, the Keinites are descendants of Yitro. What they're doing in the middle of Amalek is they're not in the middle of Amalek. Amalek are in the middle of them because that was their nature. And the third thing is, in the pasuk, it says you did kindness, and we've demonstrated that the Torah is stressing that kindness, at least according to the Rashbam, by juxtaposing the behavior of Yitro to the behavior of Amalek, and by contrasting that, by showing how different the Yitro behavior was to the Amalek behavior. This is the indication to Shaul that he needs to do something to allow them to run away. Now, this teaches us quite a significant lesson. We're talking about how long after? 450 years later. No, more, 500 years later, because we had 40 years in the desert before this as well. So almost 500 years, around 500 years later. And what? Shaul is what we call in Hebrew, makir tov. He is showing gratitude. He has not forgotten the kindness that Yitro did for Israel 500 years ago. This is a lesson in Hakarat HaTov, in showing gratitude. If we learn from Tanakh, and remember, Tanakh is not just a storybook. It is a storybook, but it's not just a storybook. It's there to teach us something, and we can learn something from every little nuance. And the nuance here is that Shaul, after 500 years, is still showing gratitude to the descendants of Yitro for the kindness that their ancestor did all those years ago. So that is something that we need to take on board. How much more so should we be grateful on an individual basis, on a national basis, to anybody that does good for us? We should never forget that, even up to 500 years, we should never forget the good that was done to us. And I suppose the corollary of that, or the flip side of it in a way, is you don't also forget the bad things that were done. You might forgive, but you never forget. All right, Jeff? You might forgive, but you never forget. Actually, you don't forgive either, really, if your truth be told, but you certainly don't forget. And Shaul didn't forget, and he didn't forget the good thing, and he gave the Keinites an opportunity to leave before the attack on Amalek. So, having dealt with the Keinites, they've now made themselves scarce. They've run away. And interestingly, the Keinites turned away from amidst Amalek. Vayasar Keini mitoch Amalek. They turned aside. Doesn't say they went away, but they turned aside. Now, I haven't read this anywhere, but it struck me that maybe we can learn something from that as well. Maybe Shaul was telling them, if you've got a bad neighbor, that's a bad thing to do. It's not a good thing to be neighbors with the Amalekites. Well, I think it'll be a good time for you to move away, turn away from, not only from them physically, but turn away from their influence. Because we ask, don't we, every morning, we pray in the morning in davening that we should be saved from a shachen ra, from a bad neighbor, because you are, by definition, whether you like it or not, you are influenced by your environment. We've all been influenced by our environment for good and for bad. And I think that we can perhaps learn a message from this as well, that Shaul is indicating to the Keinites that Zapas nicht for them to be around Amalek. It's not good for them. It's not the right thing that they should be doing, and they should turn away. And they listened to him, Vayasar Keini mitoch Amalek, and they turned away from Amalek. Okay, I think we've probably squeezed everything we possibly can out of that single pasuk. Let's move on to verse 7, Leon.
Saul struck down Amalek from Havilah to the approach to Shur, which is alongside Egypt. He captured Agag, king of Amalek, alive, and the entire people he destroyed by the edge of the sword.
Okay, let's stop there. So, what was his instruction from Shmuel? Let's go back and read verse 3, Leon, please.
Now go and strike down Amalek and destroy everything he has. Have no pity on him. Kill man and woman alike, infant and suckling alike, ox and sheep alike, camel and donkey alike.
Okay, is there anything in that pasuk which is in any way equivocal? Is there anything in that pasuk which is not clearly understandable? Is there any wiggle room in that pasuk for Shaul to keep Agag alive? I think you'd all agree that the answer is no. And then we come to verse 8. Again, please, Leon.
He captured Agag, king of Amalek, alive, and the entire people he destroyed by the edge of the sword.
Okay, so he's not done as he's told. He's kept Agag alive. Now, we need to think about this. We need to stop and think. Why would Shaul do such a thing? Why would he keep Agag alive? Any suggestions as to why Shaul Amalek would keep Agag alive? Yes, Anita.
As a sort of trophy to say, look, here I've killed everybody, but I've got the king.
And what do you think he's going to do with the king?
I'm not quite sure, but
Okay, so you're right, I think, Anita, because we have precedent in Tanakh for a victorious leader, king, to keep alive the defeated leader in order to humiliate him. Where have we seen that before?
sure.
You've all learnt it with me.
Yeah.
Where was a defeated leader humiliated in Tanakh? You'll kick yourselves when I tell you.
West Coast.
All right. Shimshon HaGibor. What did they do with him? What did the Philistines do with the shofet, the leader, the judge of Israel? Shimshon, Samson, when he was defeated, at the end, when he was betrayed by his wife and he was captured, was he killed?
No, they chained him to the pillars for
That's
everybody
right.
to see.
They poked his eyes out, right? They poked his eyes out. They chained him to a millstone and they humiliated him by putting him on a millstone in the manner of a donkey to turn the millstone, to walk round and round and round to grind the millstone in his blind state. And if you look in Sefer Shoftim, I can't remember the chapter off the top of my head, but it might be 16. I don't know why I've got that in my head, but whatever a chapter it is of Shimshon, no, it's not 16. Anyway, whatever it is, might be 8 or 9. Have a look there. You will see that the Pelishti people came to laugh at him. He uses the word tzchok, to mock him, to laugh at him, to see this leader, this once mighty leader, humiliated in the manner of a donkey walking round a millstone, pulling grinding flour. And we have precedent that the leader was kept alive in order to humiliate him. We also have another example in Sefer Shoftim, which I don't expect you to get, so I will show it you on the screen now. It's chapter 1, verse 6. Well, let's go from verse 4. Chapter 1.
Judah attacked, and Hashem delivered the Canaanite and the Perizzite into their hand. They struck them down at Bezek, 10,000 men. They found Adoni-Bezek in Bezek and battled against him, and they struck down the Canaanite and the Perizzite. Adoni-Bezek fled, and they chased after him. They seized him and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to glean under my table, as I did. So God requited me. They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there.
Okay, so here, I don't know if you remember this story, it was a bit of a side issue, but the king of Canaan at the time that was being fought by Yehuda was this chap called Adoni-Bezek.
He had their thumbs and toes.
I don't know if it's anything to do with Bezek, the phone line. Adoni-Bezek means my master Bezek. I think we're all masters slaves to our phones, aren't we? Anyway, Adoni-Bezek, the king of Canaan, was caught, and he wasn't killed initially. What did they do? They cut off his thumbs and his toes. as a sign that he had been subdued. And look what he says. He says, 70 kings, having their thumbs and their great toes cut off, gathered food under my table. He, in his own time, in his wars, had battled and defeated 70 kings, and each one of them he had not killed. He had cut off their fingers and toes and kept them in terrible circumstances of hunger, and so that they had to pick up food off the floor under his table. In other words, total humiliation. So we see here that there is a precedent in Tanakh on more than one occasion for keeping the king alive in order to humiliate him. So now, if we go back to chapter 15, and we see that verse 8, Shaul kept Agag alive, we can understand that this was a bit understandable, because there's precedent for this. What he wants to do, keep him alive, do something horrible to him, parade him in front of the people, as exactly as Anita said, as a trophy. Exactly right, a trophy. Now, the problem was, that's not what he was told to do. He was told to get rid of everybody. Now, why would he want a trophy?
Johnny, I'm not so sure. Excuse me. I'm not so sure that your reason and Anita's reason is humiliation, because the next verse actually says they took pity on him.
Okay, I'm going to come to that. Just park that for a minute. We're on a trophy at the moment. We'll come to humiliate. We'll come to pity in a minute. So go on, Anita. You're going to tell me why he wants a trophy.
Well, just for himself to show, look what I've done.
Yeah, that's right. You have a trophy. When you win a trophy, if somebody wins Wimbledon, what are they going to do with it? They parade it around, don't they? Well, look at me. Look how wonderful I am. I've won the trophy. Man, quite rightly too. That's why they're in the competition. If there'd been a different result last night, then Jordan Henderson would have lifted up the European Cup and paraded it around. Sadly, however, that wasn't to be. But anyway, that's another story. And Jordan Henderson will have to wait for another year. But Shaul wanted, sorry, Leon, Shaul wanted to parade the trophy of Agag to show how great he was. And that wasn't what he was told to do. Jeffrey, you were going to say something different.
Well, he also wanted the fat cows and sheep and...
okay. Not so sure about that. We have to look at the next verse very carefully. Yes, Anita?
But this is his character again. He's always doing his own thing. He's not doing what he's told each time.
Exactly, Anita, exactly. This is, you can see now another example of Shaul just not quite getting it right. In some ways, he's he reminds me a little bit of Just William, and those of you who remember the Just William stories, he was always really, really well-meaning. He always wanted to do the right thing, and somehow or other, he always mucked it up at the end. It always went wrong for him. He was a schnozzle. He just couldn't get it right, never. Whatever he did it wrong. But he had really good intentions. And I think this is, Shaul's personality. He doesn't listen properly. He didn't listen to Shmuel at Gilgal. He didn't wait for him to come and do the sacrifices. He didn't listen with Jonathan and with the attack there. And now he's not listened again. He didn't listen when the Cohen said, excuse me, don't you think you should ask God? Didn't listen then, only too late. And here now, he's done what Shmuel says, but he hasn't really done it properly. He's mucked it up at the last minute. And we'll come to see in next week's year, or maybe the week after, that it seems to be a personality flaw in Shaul, which ultimately results in him losing the crown. And so Leon has raised the issue of the next verse. So we will read the next verse and then we will stop at the cliffhanger so that we can have something interesting to jump into, please God, not next Sunday because it is Shavuot, but the week after. So verse 9, Leon.
Saul, as well as the people, took pity on Agag, on the best of the sheep, the cattle, the fatted bulls, the fatted sheep, and on all that was good. And they were not willing to destroy them, but the inferior and wretched livestock that they did destroy.
Okay, now we're going to stop there. I'm not going to go into this this verb vayachamol Shaul, and Shaul had pity on Agag. On the face of it, Leon is right. It wasn't a trophy. He had pity on Agag. But we will see next time, Bezrat Hashem, that actually if you just sniff a little bit below the surface, you will see that actually that's not quite the case. Everything is not what it's cracked up to be in this pasuk. This pasuk is going to need quite a bit of delving into. So we'll stop there and I'll just give a little summary of what we've said. We spoke about the command to utterly destroy Amalek, and we recapped last time a little bit. We spoke about the idea that Shaul counted the people using lambs, if you take the Art Scroll translation, so that he would not count the people, because we know they're not allowed to count the people. David Amalek did so and got in big trouble for it. We spoke about the idea that 200,000 foot soldiers was not a literal number. It just means a lot. And then we spoke about in detail about this verse 6 of the Keinites, who were they, what they were doing, and why they were allowed to let go. And then we finally mentioned that Shaul did not do what he was told, and he kept Agag alive. And then we will see next week that we're going to go into the idea that Saul had pity on Agag. And that's where we will stop for now. Any questions or comments, please? No? Okay. In that case, I wish you a good night because I'm going to bed. And Shavua Tov. Don't forget that this afternoon, Rebbe Yisrael's birthday party at 5 o'clock. All the kids are coming to wish him happy birthday. If you want to come in and join in for that for a few minutes, it'll be lovely to see you. After Mariv tonight is the showing of the film Upheaval. You will not get a chance to see this anywhere else because it's not commercially available. You normally have to pay $500 to get a license to pay it. We've got it for free because we're showing it on Yom Yerushalayim. The distributors wanted us to show it on Yom Yerushalayim, so we've got it for free, and we're putting on a showing of it tonight. I expect there'll be a lot of people there, so please come. It will be, I've announced it for 8 o'clock, but it'll probably be a little bit later because Mariv will probably finish around about 10 past 8, so we'll do it straight after Mariv. So that is not to be missed. It will not be recorded because we can't. We've not got a license to record it. So if you want to see it, it's about the life of Menachem Begin. I haven't seen it, but I'm very excited to see it. Danny Limor is in the film, and he's also going to be there to answer questions after the film as well. So a real coup for Ramat Poleg. Please come and join us then. Until then, have a nice day.
Thank you, Johnny.
Johnny, I'll miss the next 2 sessions of yours because I'll be in the States. So,
no excuse, Michael. It'll only be about 3 o'clock in the morning.
otherwise, I'll see you this Wednesday.
You'll catch up on the On the
As long as you record it, but
Yeah,
I'll see you on
yeah.
Wednesday anyway, because we're
Please
not
come.
going till after Shavuot.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll
Okay,
see you then.
thanks. Okay, bye
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.